Sheila Bair is the former head of the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. When our country was in the thick of the financial crisis, she was tasked with shoring up our banks, a job she did very well. Now, she wrote in Fortune this week that if the Fed does not raise rates soon, America could be heading for another bubble. Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke was asked about this in Congress, and he responded.
I think that keeping interest rates low is still appropriate for our economy. As for the bond bubble, interest rates are low for a lot of reasons. They include monetary policy, of course, but they also include a weak economy, low inflation expectations, and safe haven demands for U.S. Treasuries. So, of course, interest rates will rise at some point. We hope that they do, because that would be an indication that the economy is recovering and strengthening.
So is your idea that interest rates should go up a signal that you think we're okay, you're confident in this recovery, and we're not going to be set back again?
I think it's a signal that this has gone on long enough and that there's only so much you can accomplish through monetary policy. Our economy is still struggling, but I think the way to fix that is through fiscal policy, better leadership from the President and the Congress to clean out an exemption-laden tax code, to fix our entitlement programs, to provide some certainty to business about what the future trajectory of our economy will be. There's only so much the Fed can accomplish with monetary policy, and keeping rates at extremely low, near-zero rates does create inflationary pressures later on. There are risks that are involved in this, and I just don't think we're getting much further bang for the buck on it. So, no, I do think that it's time. I've said that the Fed should let the market bump interest rates up a bit and not intervene if that's the direction the market wants to go. And I think that would be a healthy thing for the economy. It could have some positive effects, too. You mentioned that it could help savers. You know, it might actually help the mortgage market, because I think some people are on the sidelines now with all the excess inventory and housing. But if they know mortgage rates are going to start going up, they might come in to lock in those low rates.
And I've maintained that position for a long time. That, you know, you might be worrying about home prices dropping another 5%, but if your mortgage goes from 4% to 6% over the course of a 15 or 30-year mortgage, that's going to be much more impactful.
You're going to make that for that, absolutely.
But what is so right now, interest rates are, the Fed rates are around 0.
Right.
The prime rate's around 3%. A 30-year fixed mortgage, if you put 20% down and have good credit, can be had for 4%. Right. What's the right amount of interest? What's the kind of interest that controls inflation, allows savers to save, but doesn't crush the economy?
Well, I think you need to have the market is part of the decision-making on this. Right now, the Fed is controlling everything. You know, when I go out and speak to investor groups, the first thing I hear is, well, we're going to have QE3. So much economic activity is being geared towards what the Fed's going to do, as opposed to, you know, what is our broader economic situation and what is our fiscal situation. I think another reason it would be healthy for interest rates to bump up a little bit is to send a signal to Congress and the administration, frankly, that they need to get our fiscal house in order. So a little bond market discipline, I think, would perhaps be helpful there. So I would like to see the market have a little bit more of a say on what interest rate, the appropriate interest rate level is, because clearly our fiscal situation is very troubled, and it does not justify these extremely low yields on treasuries right now.
I'll ask you one thing. I'm always unfair to you, but we have a lot of smart people on the show, and of the smart people we have, you explain things very clearly. Why should people, I mean, people get the inflation threat in education, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. They get the inflation threat in healthcare and in energy. They get how that affects their lives. But generally speaking, why does inflation worry policymakers so much?
Well, if it gets out of control, it could be a real problem. So that's number one. Number two, if you're on a fixed income, inflation you will lose ground. Even with the low inflation now, a lot of savers are losing ground because the kind of return they can get on their CDs or their fixed income investments is not enough to keep pace with inflation. So it can lower the standard of living. If your GDP growth and your income is not keeping pace with inflation, it can be very detrimental to the standard of living.